Welcome in, y'all. Happy Saturday night, or whenever you're watching this. Saturday night for me, it's after midnight. We're here for our midnight secret sermons where we do our secret teachings of Jesus. I'm delving into the Nag Hammadi scriptures. Doing a series. There's a playlist on my channel called Secret Teachings of Jesus, where on Saturday nights I delve into the Gnostic Gospels. Right now I'm in Nag Hammadi. I have Dead Sea Scrolls set aside. I'm sure we have plenty of material here. It's taken months to get through the Gospel of Philip. Before the Gospel of Philip, we looked into the Secret Book of James. And the Secret Book of James had a lot of dialogue and things and scene work, but the Gospel of Philip has been a lot more these cryptic passages that basically you kind of mull over and meditate on. And I am not like a theologian or anything. I'm just interested, and I give you guys the downloads that I'm getting as I'm getting them. And I come in from work and I basically pick out a passage that stands out or portion, and I read it once or twice, and then I start the video and I just start talking. So let's get started. So I'm going to read the portion once through, and then we'll start unpacking. And tonight, every week, our episode is like 45 minutes long, and I'm trying not to make them so long, but they just always end up expanding. And I always think, oh, this one only has like 3 sentences. It'll probably not be, and it's usually like 45 minutes long anyway. This is 1 sentence, guys. 1 sentence. So let's see how we can, if we can get out without it being 45 minutes. Okay. Yes. So, okay. And then I also like to give the note about, so I'm doing this after midnight or during the midnight hour, usually it's between midnight or after. And so midnight is a very positive and powerful time of day. This, Kabbalistically speaking, the early first hours of the morning are the most positive. And so basically there's this surrounding light of positivity that adds extra blessing into the studies that we're doing at this time of night. There is extra light revealed, extra wisdom. And there is a quality of what is called the surrounding light that is protective, and it sort of helps filter in the intensity of the light that we're taking in, so that we don't have to go through like this chaotic process to embody the lessons that we're learning. So it helps it integrate the material better. And yeah, and then it also makes it even more powerful that we are pushing ourselves outside of our comfort zone and going against the body consciousness to receive instant gratification by like pushing ourselves outside of like when we're tired or we don't feel like it. When you do something that is difficult for you and you push through difficulty and you overcome your weakness, it reveals even more light, even more power. So it's really good to push yourself when you don't feel like it, because that's when it's always the most important. Like for instance, anytime I'm like very tired and I don't feel like doing these videos, I know that that's going to be the time that it is the absolute most important video to do. So with no further ado, our portion tonight is meeting the king. No one can meet the king while naked. That's it. That's the portion. And so I'm going to read it again. And it's called Meeting the King. No one can meet the king while naked. Okay, so there's a lot about nakedness. But I want to start by saying that it means no one can meet the king without taking on the clothing of the flesh. Because when we are not embodied in the material, like when we're just souls, we can't do the process of soul correction. So there is a Hebrew word, tikkun. And tikkun is the process through this life and, possibly other incarnations of taking the different aspects and governing forces within us and parts of our soul and bringing them into balance. And on a cosmic level, it has to do with those governing forces in the different dimensions of ourselves. But in a material way, it's how we express and how we relate to one another in this life and how we show up to life and what kind of person we are and all of that. And so when we are in the soul realm, the spiritual realm, not the non-physical realm, where all this potential, right? But it hasn't come into fruition. And so when we are on that side, we make these agreements and contracts to come in and live in these certain places and have these certain parents and siblings and, important poignant relationships through our lives that are many times very intense and very challenging, and sometimes are really great. But what they're there for is to bring us up against our growth edge and push us to transcend ourselves and evolve and heal. And so, when we put negativity into this world, we have to go through tikkun, correction, to purify that, to balance that out through judgment, through difficult experiences that teach us the perspective, right? That teach us compassion, forgiveness. Some of us need to be less selfish, and some of us need to be a little less overgiving, right? So each person has in this life, the charts, we're back with charts. So this is the tree of life. These circles are the 10 dimensions of consciousness, and they are the light in its fullness, the creator, is all up here, and it comes through in the purest form here. But it's too intense for us. It's too much power and awe and consciousness. So it has to come through these different filtrations and go through these processes, right? And these are the different dimensions also of our soul. This is the map of the cosmos in the macrocosm, but in the microcosm, it's the human soul. And so these forces, they need to be in balance. And if they're out of balance, they're vices. And when they're in balance, they're virtuous. So there's all these different qualities and virtues and different things associated with each of these different dimensions. Some of them have to do with mathematics and organization, and some of them have to do with symphony and love and lust, and some of them have to do with judgment and strength and the soldier energy, and some of them have to do with mercy energy and justice and fairness. So there's all these different things going on here, all of the ingredients that make up reality and the human being and the soul and God, right? This is the Godhead. This is the map of that physical, or the expression of God in the systematic form. So there's so many layers here to dissect. But on the right hand column side of mercy is if you have a right column tikkun, then that means that you err on the side of being overly merciful. And maybe you lack strong enough boundaries, and you need to deepen your self-worth so that you have more of a sense of deserving and more of a definite, knowing where you end and another person begins kind of thing. People who don't have enough strength and they overgive, they create problems as well from the overgiving. And then there's a reason for that overgiving, right? They're trying to fill a void, or like they're trying to get validation or something. So there's an imbalance there. Now the column of the left-hand column is the column of judgment. And so the people who have left-hand column tikkun have a tendency to be more overly selfish and self-serving. And so they need to balance by being more sharing. So it's all about balance and bringing that into balance. And then each tikkun has more in-depth detail, but these are the broadest, generalist 2 categories. Within that, our astrological natal chart comes into play, right? There's different qualities of each sign that affect our personality in different ways. So we come here in this life and we are working things out, doing our Tikkune Correction. And that is what is the ascension process of the transcendence of the soul. It's when we overcome our inner demons on these different levels. And there's like 7 levels that we work with in our consciousness. So this here, Malchut, is the level of the material realm in which we are clothed when we have our physical form here. This is the multiverse here. It's not even just our universe. It's all of physical existence. These dimensions here, they're called Zeranpin, and there's 7 of them. And that's the 7 mansions. When you hear about the 7 things, this is the 7 seas, the 7 mansions, the 7, these are the 7, the powers, the 7 demons. It's like the 7 demons are these gone wrong, right? There's a whole version of this gone like this. And it's the infernal, dark nature. And so when you overcome those 7 archetypal demons within, those are the parts of the lower self, the ego, right? That keep us chained in bondage. And so as you overcome and you transcend in those seven ways, you are emptying the self of the small self, the ego, and you're surrendering that ego to the care of the higher self, the super ego, the spirit self, that is connected fully. And so that is the process, or generally in broad strokes, a quick look at the process of ascension, or the description of what that is. And so we can only go through that process of ascension here on earth while we're here. Once we die and we're once again a spirit and a soul, it's not that we lose our consciousness. It's like that part is with us, and we go to this realm and we have a period there and we come back and we do it all again. But we can't correct anything from the other side. So all the spiritual realm, all the angels, all the everything, they are all watching, like involved, because this is where it all happens. This is where the clothing is, right? This is where we meet the king. This is where we get outside, because once we are non-physical, it's like if the purest, highest part of our consciousness is fully connected to divine, then that means that here we're really just a projection of an individualized consciousness, but our deepest part of ourselves, the purest part of ourselves, is divine, experiencing divine self. And so before there was physical reality, God was up here in the negative veils of existence in just pure potential and pressure and like wanting to share with a vessel, just alone, like wanting to even speak, right? And in order to have anything come out, it's like that's the first moment of duality, right? Like, so it's like when God is all one and contained, there is no other to share with. And so light wants vessel, light wants to give to vessel, light wants to be in vessel, right? And so this is us being vessel. So The king cannot meet the king when the king is alone in that unexpressed, unmanifest potential, right? It has to come through this process to meet itself, to meet the self. I am that I am becoming. So we have to come here and put on clothes in order to meet the king. The king can't even meet the king until we are clothed. Now, what's interesting is in the early days in the Bible, that time period, in Hebrew culture, it was considered, if you looked upon a naked person, it wasn't the naked person that was that took on the shame. It was actually the person who looked on the naked person. It had more of an effect on you than the actual naked person just being naked. Like, that wasn't necessarily like as much of an effect as what was coming off of being exposed to a naked person. It's like you gained, you took on this shame for it. Now, there's a concept in Kabbalah called bread of shame. Bread of shame happens when you give to someone without them earning it or without them having an active desire, and so they're just like, they don't really want it all that much, and then over time it causes resentment. If you overgive to your kids, they resent you for it. If you overgive to a partner, they resent you for it. If you overgive at work, they take it for granted. So there's like this thing that happens, and two, it happens if we take something that we didn't earn. We have bread of shame. And so the light, there's a lot of power and light from our nakedness, from our naked form, the exposed flesh. And so if you are taking all that in an unsolicited moment, or without earning or whatever, or without the right context, then I guess it can give you bread of shame, because you're exposed to that power and that light, and it's like there was no vessel for it, right? So that is some context around, like, if you looked upon a person back then, it was the looking that created the shame, and not necessarily the nudity itself, or the nude person was less in shame than the actual onlooker, so we're all there. Okay, so meeting the king. No one can meet the king while naked. Now, when we talk about taking on cloaks and taking on yolks, and yolk isn't a clothing, but it's something that you put on, you wear. When we talk about like the coat of many colors, we're also talking about awakening to these different levels, these dimensions of consciousness. Because these are the governing forces of reality, but these are also the levels of consciousness within the soul. And so these are like taking on a new cloak, right? And so it's so funny, because in order to meet the king, we have to first come here and be born in the flesh. But in order to truly meet the king, we have to be born again in the spirit. So we first come down to be born into the material world, into the flesh, so that we can then awaken and go through a process of earning the light again, of building the vessel, of creating the vessel, of building the vessel. And so as we go through this process, we start transcending those parts of ourselves and awakening to these deeper levels of consciousness and these broader, wider levels of consciousness. And we start having these higher, more abstract concepts and understandings and this relationship with God that didn't exist before. So it's like, as we put on clothes, we can see the king, we meet the king, it becomes personal. We're awakening in that consciousness. And so this is the body of God. This is the Godhead. So as we turn these things on within us, we're connecting, we're having affinity with the light, we're building this vessel, but we're becoming one with the king, right? We're the bride, the bridegroom taking in, right? So we're getting that holy sacred union with the king, becoming one with the king. And so no one can meet the king while naked. No one can meet the king. No one can truly transcend and have this experience and awakening and transcendence and ascension and be saved and redeemed and awakened, and have that Messiah energy, the Mashiach, without first coming to earth and being born and going through a process. So it's like, we don't need to curse ourselves as humans. It's like, we are gifted this opportunity to be here. It's a privilege to be a human. And when we realize that, it's like we are able to embrace our lower nature, because without the lower nature, we wouldn't have a process. In Rosh Hashanah season, we study Adam and Eve. And had there not been any fall of consciousness, there wouldn't have been any need for a process. And there wouldn't have been any need for Malchut, the material realm. Before this, Adam and Eve were up here in this realm of bliss and harmony, and they didn't need the physical. It was like they were in the astral, or it was like they were at a soul level and a spiritual level, and they had like this version of the Garden of Eden, but they didn't need the toil of breaking the wheat to make the bread. And so the fall, the mistake, the thing that we curse them for and we curse ourselves for and we self-loathe about, we have shame and guilt, is actually the thing that gave us the way to come here to begin with. It gave us our validity. It gave us a reason for being. So our flaws are just as much, our humanity is just as sacred as our divinity. And so it's all about embracing both of those and fully integrating both as sacred. And it's funny too, because I'm just about getting into shadow work. And it's coming up in something that I'm doing in workshops and tubing magnetic workshops. And it's so funny that you have to reintegrate, like you have to see your shadow and accept it fully in order to heal it, not reject it. And that's the parts of you that were rejected, or that you believed you would be rejected for, that you have to like reintegrate and heal those. So very interesting. I feel like this is all that I want to say about this tonight. We are out at 22 minutes. I can't promise that more won't come to me through the week, but yes, the fall gave us a reason to have clothing, to come here in the physical and to go through the process. Okay. And when Adam and Eve fell, when they ate of the fruit, which it's not really that they took a bite of an apple. They actually had sex right before it was like 6 hours too early. They were not in Shabbat yet. They weren't fully cooked. They weren't fully integrated masculine and feminine before they came into union. And so that's what caused the fall. And so even though it was always meant to happen, it was just like too soon. And the only thing that caused the fall was not the actual mistake. It was the shame of the mistake that caused the fall. But in the story, God finds them and they're clothed. And he said, who told you needed to clothe, or who told you needed to cover up? So isn't it funny that it was once the fall happened, that's when they took on the clothing, right? When we fell from the garden, that's when the physical process started. That's when we put on these bodies. So much to think on. All right. Meeting the king. No one can meet the king while naked. All right, y'all. You think about that. And if anything else comes to me, I might do a part 2 next week. It's one of those times where it's like it might actually happen. But just like our 3 women named Mary, kind of turned into a 2-parter. But all right, y'all. I'll see y'all tomorrow for our Oracle energy forecast for the week. Ciao.